Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Boston Manor frontman Henry Cox to the podcast. The new Boston Manor record, Sundiver, is out today on Sharptone Records. Henry talks about his local music scene, how fatherhood and the pandemic reshaped the band, how touring has changed as the years have gone by, the process of promoting a record, and more. This was a fun chat, and I'm stoked to finally share it with you guys. So many of these interviews that are now being released I've had for months, so I hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, thanks for listening and checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast feed on whatever platform you enjoy listening to the podcast, I hope you would subscribe. 2 episodes every week, lots of new music on the horizon. You can find links in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com to our podcast community, to our mailing list, and to our Patreon page. At $1 a month, you get early access to every episode. Enjoy today's chat with Henry from Boston Manor. Now, say like post-COVID, one of the things it's like shit happens. Like, this is not a big deal. I'm not important. Like, whatever. Like, if we're late, who gives a shit?
I do remember though the whole like Zoom thing first kicking off, and it being like some of my friends who had like, I guess, quote unquote more regular jobs were just kind of like, yeah, it's like everyone's really fucking chilled now. It's great.
It seems like all that chill is gone now, though. So
yeah, definitely.
Especially here in America, everybody's like, nope, back to fucking work. How you doing today?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Yeah, the sun is shining, which is unusual, even in July here. So I've been really enjoying the weather the last week or so. Had band practice this morning. Just been kicking it with the boys and a few things to do this afternoon. So yeah. Pretty nice Monday. How about yourself?
Nice. Yeah, doing good. Sun's out here too, but that just means it's hot it's way too hot.
Where are you at?
Washington, D.C.
Oh yeah. Wicked.
So it's great. It's great. Where in England are you?
I live in Manchester, which is only like an hour from where everyone else in the band is from. Or where I'm from as well. But so northwest. I don't know if you probably know the UK, but sort of northwest England.
Cool.
It's nice. It's called Rain City though. It's one of the rainiest parts of the country, in an already rainy country. So
for pretty sure. Yeah. You said you grew up about an hour outside of Manchester.
Yeah, so we're from a town called Blackpool, which is like a seaside town. Think kind of like the Jersey Shore, but a bit more kind of like Coney Island sort of thing. It's a really, really fascinating place. I mean, I grew up in I'm quite privileged. I grew up in quite a nice suburb of it. But it's a really interesting town. It used to be sort of like the vacation capital of the UK from like the Victorian times until I guess like the 70s or 80s, probably the 80s, and then kind of flights to like Spain and Italy and places became so cheap that people were going there instead. And then it became sort of a bit of a party town. So it's a little bit of like a kind of Atlantic City vibe now, like a lot of like stag and hen do's as we call them, bachelor parties, and a lot of like casino stuff. So it's a bit of a sin city now, but it's still it's still got its charm. I love it. It's a really unique place, and most of the bands still live there. It's great. We love it.
Nice. What led you to Manchester? Just like
I went to college here, nearest kind of major city. So if we wanted to go see a gig, like not really anything came through Blackpool when we were kids. So if we wanted to go see a gig, you'd get on a train for like 40 minutes and this would be the nearest place. So it's everybody where we grew up are very familiar with the city. Yeah. So I mean, the UK is so small. If this was America, Blackpool would probably be considered as like a suburb of Manchester. You know what I mean? It's not far away at all.
Nice. That's cool. What got you into music? I know this record kind of revolves around the theme of like rediscovering those bands that influenced you at first.
Totally, yeah. I was just saying actually, before this interview, I was saying I was trying to sort of pinpoint it because I didn't have like a kind of a lot of instruction from, I don't know, like a dad who had like a cool record collection or anything. Like, no shade to my dad, but his record collection was pretty sparse growing up. And I don't have any older siblings or anything. So, from jump, I was just kind of really fascinated by music, I think. Yeah. It will have probably been through sort of just pop culture references in like The Simpsons and I guess kind of music in films and things, soundtracks and stuff. I remember I really liked like basketball for some reason, the NBA. I think from watching Space Jam as like a little kid.
Okay.
So I think that's probably what I was like. Basketball's really cool. And you could get like a really kind of primitive sort of it wasn't like a stream. It was almost like a kind of like ESPN roundup that you could pay for on like home computer. So it was like, you know, it would take me all night to like load these like short kind of 5-minute video clips up of just like, you know, the games that had happened that week or whatever it was. And you paid like a $5 a fucking month for it or something. I don't know. And in between all the like plays and stuff and all the little mashups, there'd be like loads of like just rap songs.
Yeah.
And like sort of stuff that was really popular in the early 2000s at the time. And it's stuff that wasn't really making any waves over here. So, you know, I'm 30, so it was sort of still like buying CDs, and the internet was in like and at this point I'm like 8 years old, by the way. So there wasn't a whole lot of like stuff that you could just like find out. You start to find music is what I'm driving at.
Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of like really into rap for any kind of like US hip hop, because UK wasn't really a thing at that point. Or at least that I was aware of. And yeah, I guess it was kind of that. And then there was a much cooler than me kid at school, primary school. So elementary school, we call it primary school. And he had older brothers. And he was like, you should listen to Linkin Park because they have like rapping in it. And I was like, okay. And then I think I went out and bought the first CD I ever bought, Hybrid Theory, when I was like 9, and I just fell in love with it. I just thought it was so amazing, and I still really like that record. I think it's just aged really well as well. I think it's great. And I just, you know, it doesn't really sound, even now, it doesn't really sound like anything else. It's got such a distinct sound to it. Obviously, there's screaming in it, which I'd only heard before. I like parts of it like really hard, like it's even by today's standard, like hard tunes. But it's really poppy as well, you know, it's so hooky and stuff. So I just fell in love with that record, and yeah, I guess from there I was kind of hooked with all music. And a couple of years later, kind of like LimeWire came out and stuff, so you could kind of get better access to it. But I was still buying CDs, and we didn't have like Sky TV, which is like our version of like cable at home, because it was too expensive. But my nan had it. So I would kind of go to hers like after school sometimes, and they had like Kerrang TV and Scuzz TV and like MTV2 were like the only like music channels. Yeah. So I would like just watch every band or any artist really that I could, and kind of soak it all up. I was just a bit of a sponge at that point. Any kind of music and pop culture, I was just like, I just want to know about it all. I want to listen to it all. I just loved it. I was so obsessed with it immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there once you kind of got obsessed and like knew, like, was there a good scene in Manchester, like whether local or just touring acts coming through?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the second kind of, well, I'm sure people argue with me about this, but it's kind of the second one of, not geographically the second biggest, but probably the second biggest market in terms of like, you know, if any artist from like a pub to an arena will come through Manchester, basically. So we're pretty spoiled in that respect. But even locally in the town that I'm from, there was at that point there was loads of gigs going on, you know, like just local gigs. Like everyone was forming bands and stuff. There was like a good scene, and it was mostly metal. Was really, really popular. So there's loads of people. Everyone was in a metal. I was in a metal band. Everyone was in a metal band, and it was cool. And we were like super young, but like still putting on our own shows and stuff, and like pubs and kind of like fucking bingo halls and whatever we could find, like our equivalent of like VFWs, I guess, that kind of thing. And it would be sort of like you'd normally get like one go at it, because it'd either be they'd see like kids moshing and be like, nope, you're never coming back here again. So you'd have to find like a new spot next week. Or I say, unfortunately, like we were all taking part in this when we became like more teenagers, you know, like everyone was like, you know, drinking and stuff. Drinking culture's like you drink a lot earlier in the UK, legally, and definitely by proxy illegally as well. So yeah, you know, obviously if there was like pubs, obviously that's super illegal and get them shut down. So they would shut down gigs mid show quite a lot, and which is a shame in hindsight, you know, really ruined it. And we tried to make an effort to stop that from happening, but it was just what it was. But there wasn't really any sort of small venues then at all. There's a couple now, but there's no way sort of that's an actual gig venue where you could go and play really. So we're actually trying to set a space up in Blackpool for like well, anyone and everyone, but mainly kind of like the youth to have a spot to play in, like a kind of like non-for-profit DIY space for that reason, because we just never had anywhere to go, you know.
Yeah, that's cool. In the States, it's like kind of nice that there's like a Live Nation that has all these venues that creates this really cool touring circuit, but it sucks because it just killed all the small venues. And
totally,
especially post-pandemic, it's just like the small venues just went away.
For sure, yeah, and we've only done like a couple of full USs since the pandemic, and I definitely noticed that we'd get to places. One of them was like supporting a really big band, so it was more like just a like big old fucking House of Blues tour.
Yeah.
And the other one was a headliner, which was smaller venues, and there was definitely like, you know, you chat to promoters in some city, you know, some of the more regional cities.
Yeah.
You know, particularly on like sort of like the South and the East Coast and stuff, where they'd be like, oh, yeah, that place is gone now. We've moved here now because that place is gone and that place is shutting down soon. And yeah, it sucks, man. It's a real bummer.
Yeah. Let's talk about Boston Manor. How'd this band get started?
Well, out of the ashes of that kind of like little metal scene thing that we had going on, you know, the two brothers were in a band, the other two guys were in a band, and I was in another band, and I'd gone away to university at the time, but I also used to more so than being a band, I was in a band, but more so than that, I like filmed loads of music videos for all the local bands. I was like the video guy.
Yeah.
So I knew all these guys more from like shooting their music videos and stuff. But they knew I could sing. And the brothers were like going to start this new band up, and I just like was like, yeah, cool, I'll come down and just start writing some tunes with you. And it just kind of snowballed really. And we immediately, I kind of brought in the other two guys, and we just never really stopped. And it was like really sort of like, we just went for it straight away. You know, we kind of like booked a bunch of like DIY tours immediately here and in Europe. You know, bought a van and like an old like little postal van and like converted it into like a like touring van, and just went everywhere that we could, you know, and like self-released music and it happened it felt like forever, but I look back and I was like, well, within 2 years really we were signed to like Pure Noise, going to the States, so it did happen really quickly. And yeah, you know, all same members 10 years later, we're all best friends. I love those guys to death. They're my kid's godfather, all four of them. And yeah, it's been a real crazy journey.
Yeah.
You know?
It's pretty rare to have a band a decade in and have all the original members still.
It really is, yeah. You know, we're the sum of our made up of the sum of our parts, really. But it works really well. Yeah.
What was the inspiration for the band's name?
No interesting story there, really. Unfortunately, it was just a demo of a friend's emo band they changed the name of. It was like a working title, and I was like, we need a name, can I nick that? And he was like, yeah. And then it turned out that it was just like the area in London that they were staying at the time.
Okay.
That, and I was like, oh, that's a bit embarrassing, I've already called my band that now. But but yeah, so it's a tube stop, you know, on the London Underground. If people go and take selfies at the fucking sign and write on it, Yeah, so it's not a name that I love. I don't hate it either. It's kind of a bit nondescript, really, but it's our name, isn't it? You can't change it now.
Yeah, there's so many stories of just like we needed a name, we'd put it on the flyer. 10 years later, it's
the hardest. No one tells you the hardest part of being a band is naming it.
Yeah, and then you're just like, it sucks, but it's what we're known for.
It's that name now, yeah. There's definitely worse names. I see some names, I'm like, fucking hell, I'm glad that we're not called that. So
yeah. Let's jump ahead and talk about releasing Glue May of 2020. What was that experience like for you guys?
Oh, it fucking sucked. It was such a bummer. Like, you know, I was doing all kind of like this stuff, like a bunch of interviews, and we put out like it was quite short. I remember it was quite a short lead up.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was only like 3 or 4 months from like the first single to like the record being released. So it wasn't very long. And I released the first single, and then the day after, me and my now wife flew to New Zealand to do some traveling. And then as soon as we came back, like a week later, it was like COVID.
Shit.
Yeah, and then like 2 months later or whatever, the fucking record came out, and we did like one of them virtual gigs, which was kind of cool, but it wasn't that cool. and then by the time it was all lifted, we put out a new EP. So we kind of skipped it really. But in hindsight, you know, it's one of my. I love all our albums. I should preface that. I don't like bands that come on and like really shit talk everything that they've done in the past. And it's like, come on, man. Like, people love those albums and stuff. I'd say it's one of my least favorite, but I still do like it only because it's sort of I'm a big fan of like kind of cohesiveness and themes and kind of like real intricacies that of a project as a whole. Whereas this album, we was kind of like really enjoyed making it, and we were like all over the place creating stuff and experimenting with stuff. And I'm really glad that we did that, because I think we got a lot out of it, and it furthered us along as artists. But it's quite messy in a sense, you know, and a lot of the creative decisions are not ones that I would make today. But that's all part of the journey, you know. But they're also like the hardest songs to play. So in a sense, we kind of did ourselves a favor by not having to play that much of it. But no, it is one of those things. Really, it's a lot of bands have had it at the pandemic, and it sucks. But some bands did really well out of it. You know, they timed it right, and it worked great in their favor. But it is weird, you know. We went and listened to all very self-indulgently. We had a really long drive to do last month, and we listened to all of our discography like in a row. Oh, wow. And I haven't listened to some of these songs in like years. And yeah, Glue really stuck out to me. I was like, fuck, that's such a like crazy album. There's loads of songs on it, and it's like all over the place. But I find it quite charming in that sense. Yeah.
Coming out of the pandemic, you guys then signed with Sharptone Records. Was that a moment of maybe not rebranding the band, but like maybe taking stock of what you had done previously and where you wanted to go forward and in the future?
I think so. Yeah. Whether consciously so or not, I think having that period of like reflection, and prior to that, we toured for like 10 months of the year every year. So we would write the songs on the road, book out like 6 weeks where we were not touring to just go straight in the studio, and then we'd go straight back on tour again. So it was just kind of like we just never had a moment to kind of like step back and look at things, and obviously having that kind of forced upon you was quite jarring, but it did give us time to really take stock, like you say, take stock of everything and kind of figure out what worked and what didn't work. And also, I just think our taste had expanded so much in that kind of period of time of like from album one to this point. We were kind of like knew what we liked and what we didn't like at this point. And I mean, the Boston Manor, I suppose if you had to kind of like sum up a sound, we do the kind of like dark and stormy thing quite well, I think. So when a really dark and stormy time came about, it kind of was like very natural to make a really dark EP and then record after that, that fitted into that kind of world. It was very genuine. It wasn't sort of, well, people like the sound, so we should make it. It was just kind of like the music that came out of us at the time. I suppose it happened to coincide with a new label. They're amazing. I really love Sharptone. They've been such great partners with us on these 2 albums. It's not that they sort of initiated any sort of thing. They've been incredibly gracious and hands off and just let us do our thing. But yeah, I suppose having a label for a certain amount of time up until a point and then that contract ending and you kind of like going elsewhere definitely is sort of like a moment where you're like, oh, that's a chapter that's kind of come to an end, And, we had, Pure Noise, offered us another deal and they still remain like great friends of ours. Like we see them all the time at kind of like festivals and stuff. And I love that label and I'm immensely proud to have been part of that label. And, there's no hard feelings or anything there, but I think it's just one of those things when you get to a certain point in your career where you've got X amount of albums under your belt, you kind of like, I suppose, want to sort of try something a little bit different.
Yeah. You hit that level and it's just like, okay, what's next, right?
For sure.
A chance to do something new and, why not?
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's been a bit of an ethos of the band, really. It's like keep kind of expanding and just mixing it up because we just get itchy feet otherwise, really.
Yeah. Coming into the new record, reading this press release, it sounds like they're like 2 impactful moments, fatherhood and sobriety kind of coexisting at the same time. Like I know talking to Capstan about their new record, Fatherhood, like changed their record. Mm-hmm. What was it about becoming a father that like brought this like new light or positivity or energy?
Well, I should preface that by saying 2 things. One, my daughter wasn't born until the record came out. Well, not the record came out now yet, and she is very much around. Until we finished making that. But obviously, the backdrop to all of this was that she was on her way the whole time we were kind of making it, and it very much fits into just the theme of all of it, of like rebirth, new life, kind of beginnings, and kind of like a rediscovering of innocence, I suppose. It came about in this really beautiful way, and our drummer had a child as well. So it was a really nice kind of, I don't know, just sort of coming together of all this stuff that felt really natural and really beautiful, I think. I should also say that I'm not strictly sober. I am right now, by the way. But I'm not like teetotal or anything still. But all that to say that when we were making some of those, the last record, me and a couple of us were, we were touring a lot at the end of the pandemic and stuff, and drinking a bunch, and kind of realized that it was pretty unhealthy, and stopped doing that. So I have a very early 30s take on drinking these days. More I partake only occasionally, but but that in of itself has been a huge game changer and a huge kind of like mental shift, and a really positive thing in my life, and I think I suppose it's all been and I turned 30 as well, which is crazy this time, and it all kind of, I suppose it was just a big kind of transition period, and I tried to capture as much of that in like the lyrics and stuff as I could, really. Sliding doors, butterfly wings, nothing is yours, it's all for free.
Album's called Sundiver. Where'd that title come from?
Just, you know what? For a record that is so kind of meticulously thought out, that name was just quite visceral. I saw the cover came first.
Okay.
We saw this kind of crazy glass sculpture. I mean, I've been looking at that thing for 10 years. It's just in our town. It's massive. You can't miss it. And I was like, it just looks like this explosion of like positivity and like life and like the Big Bang and shit, and just this, just it just looks like how the album sounds as well. And there's kind of a couple songs where it kind of plays on the idea of like, alternate universes and like different versions of yourself and portals and stuff. And I just thought like this record is all about the daytime and the day after the Torah and just the sun, and it just feels like just falling into this just like big explosion of like energy and positivity. So yeah, and it looks great on a t-shirt. So
yeah. Yeah. You talked about like the lead up to Glue's release being like super short, where it's like single to album release, where it's only a few weeks. Especially post pandemic, it seems like the cycle for an album coming out is, 6 months to a year now. What has that change been like to have this extended release cycle?
Good and bad, I think. I don't like this record. I've had it in my like on my computer for like a year now, nearly. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's weird. And I kind of like that period of time where it sort of feels like this little secret that you've got when you haven't really announced the record, but you're like listening to like the mixes and stuff, and you're like, oh fuck yeah. But I think it's cool because we've been able to showcase more of the variety on the record than previous album cycles. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. Sometimes I'll kind of look back and be like, I don't know that the single choices necessarily best reflects the whole album. Mm-hmm. That's hard to do anyway. But with this, we've been able to kind of because there's still two more kind of singles or songs. Where I mean, what is a single these days anyway? But two more songs off the record to put out before the album drops. And it shows kind of the variety that's on the record, which is really nice. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, yeah, sometimes I worry: are people going to be a bit tired of seeing our fucking name everywhere when the record comes out? I don't know, but yeah, I mean, will we do it again this way? Maybe not. I don't know. It was a bit of an experiment in that sense because the Torah it's such a short record anyway. Some people don't even call it an album. And the cycle was really short, so we kind of wanted to do the opposite, really. Yeah.
Album's out beginning of September. You guys are heading to Australia, then you got a big UK tour. Is that just your plans for the rest of the year, and then looking for possibly coming stateside in 2025?
Yeah, we got a Europe headliner as well at the end of the year, November, which we're excited about. But yeah, I mean, stateside, hopefully next year. We'll see what happens. We went from touring the US constantly to touring it much less frequently, but it's just a lot more expensive now than it used to be, and to go somewhere for like away from my family for like 6 weeks, you got to make sure that it's going to be like a really good tour that's going to be worth it. So we're just sort of like figuring that out at the moment, really. We did some stuff there last year, like a few headliners and a festival, but not like a full tour or anything. But yeah, that's the plan. And we have some other plans to go to some other countries that we've never been to before, which I'm really stoked about. See, hopefully that'll come into fruition. But yeah, we haven't toured that much over the last few years, really. So I'm looking forward to kind of having this new music out and playing a bunch of shows and getting back to it.
Yeah. Has having a child reshaped your thoughts on touring and just like, I can't be gone for 6 months at a time or something? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, touring is still as fun as it was, but you've always got this thing that you're just missing so much. So it's really bittersweet now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I don't want to miss I hate going a day without seeing her. It's absolutely horrible, but also like, I don't want to miss all the kind of first times and stuff. And then it's not fair on her. So yeah, and it helps having two parents in the band, but we definitely sort of have had like multiple conversations about sustainable touring and not just kind of like doing stuff that is going to be like detrimental to our families. I mean, it's hard enough. We put enough on our partner's shoulders by effectively making them single parents for a few weeks at a time, which is really rough. But there is ways to do it that make it a little bit easier, and I want to be doing this for as long as possible, so I don't want to kind of just overdo it and burn everything out. So I think also post pandemic, there's ways to do this where you don't have to be on tour 10 months of the year. I've done that a lot. Like we did that for years, and it gets to the point where you're just like, I don't want to go tour again.
the industry shifted, and you don't have to spend as much time just like hustling your ass off.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also comes to the point where you kind of like, especially notice with people touring America, where it's like, well, where it's like, yeah, I could do a full US, and this sucks for like people that are in the middle of the country.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of people are just kind of like, listen, I could make like nearly as much as that in half the time if I just did like, 10 cities.
Yeah.
Maybe split it up or something, or like flew in between, or just broke a tour up into a bunch of kind of little chunks. Problem for us is that we have to fly every time, and we also need a visa. So when we start a US tour, we're like $25,000 in the reds.
Right. Yeah.
It's you have to kind of be clever with it.
You hate me, yeah, and you